What is up, everyone? I'm here to talk to you today. It's more of a discussion video, not really a rant, but what makes underrated anime, or what makes an anime underrated? Because on the Hajime No Ippo video, not that it really matters, but on the title, I put underrated anime, Hajime No Ippo. I've done it with initial D. Personally, that's, I do that for animes that I think are underrated. It doesn't necessarily make them underrated, but I think these animes are vastly overlooked, and I can name about, 3 or 4 others. Of course, I think Fist of the North Star is vastly underrated. Yu Yu Hakusho might be the #1 most underrated anime, in my opinion. There's a few others I could go through, Monster, that sort of stuff. But, what makes an anime underrated in my eyes and that sort of stuff? And it's not going to be like the obvious, like, oh, it's underrated because not a lot of people have watched it or heard about it. But, that's kind of the stupid, obvious answer. But for me, I think it's, people don't really discuss these animes so much anymore, especially in the case of, keep it current with what people were kind of going back and forth with me. Not really going back and forth with me, but they're like, oh, it's number 14 on my anime list, or number 12 on my some website or something or other, so therefore it doesn't make it underrated. Hajime no Ippo is still an ongoing manga and anime. They're looking forward to doing a 3rd season for the anime, and the manga is still ongoing. But you don't really hear people discuss these animes / mangas as intensely as we'll see with, Naruto, One Piece, and even Bleach. Those are always discussed chapter by chapter by chapter. Every single thing is dissected. There's previews, there's reviews. There should not be previews. I'm going alright, but there should not be previews for a chapter. I'm sorry, that's, I can understand. There's discussion videos, though. They really go out of their ways to show their love for anime. And hey, that's cool, I'm not going to crash on you for that, although, I'll make fun of the anime you watch. But if you're passionate about anime, I am very cool with that. But for me, underrated anime, like I said, if people are not discussing it, if people are not going and, recommending these animes, because when I recommend anime, I recommend, I'll go down a whole entire list and give people a list. I'm not going to say, oh, just watch Dragon Ball Z, just watch Rurouni Kenshin, watch Cowboy Bebop, because those are the animes, you will hear about these animes. For me, underrated anime should be something like, oh, if you want something that's really, because you've heard Dragon Ball Z, fantastic, excellent, set the standard for the action anime, shonen, shoujo, more shonen actually, set the standard for shonen anime, Cowboy Bebop, set the standard for shoujo anime, and so on and so forth. But for, especially Yu Yu Hakusho, because I've heard people call Yu Yu Hakusho overrated, and I find it vastly underrated, and here is why. I would like you to name one anime / manga that has such a equal balance between the main character, Yusuke Urameshi, and the side characters, Kuwabara, Hiei, and Kurama. In every single arc, in every single saga, it's not like they just, here, throw Kuwabara fight. Every single fight these characters fight in, especially, when you talk about the Dark Tournament, and even going afterwards, although, to be fair, Yu Yu Hakusho, not the best ending in my world, but I don't know how else they really would have ended it, because they kind of, once the Dark Tournament was like the pinnacle of the series. But I would like you to name one anime and manga. I'm sure, of course, there are some out there. There's thousands upon thousands upon thousands of mangas and thousands upon thousands upon thousands of animes. So, of course, there's going to be some. But for me, Yu Yu Hakusho has, such an equal balance of importance of the Yusuke fights and what happens with Yusuke as it does with Kuwabara and Hiei and Kurama. Even Dragon Ball Z, although they'll throw Vegeta a fight occasionally, but it'll be like Vegeta just getting the shit kicked out of him by Perfect Cell because he allowed Cell to turn perfect, and therefore that is that's his payback for allowing that to happen. In Yu Yu Hakusho, there's times where Yusuke can't fight, and these characters Yusuke will be out doing something else, these characters step up to the plate, and there's a whole, episode or two just dedicated to the characters' fights, and they're really intense fights. So, I think that's what really makes it underrated in my opinion, aside from fantastic writing, awesome, the enemies that they come up with are, you don't really typically see enemies of this archetype. Usually your enemies are more stereotypical. The Toguro brothers are out of their fucking mind, and I don't think Yu Yu Hakusho is overrated at all. I think it is very underrated for reasons that I can keep going on about. But when I think about underrated anime, I think about what do these animes, what do these mangas do so well that people don't really appreciate? Initial D, it took car drifting. I hate cars. I could care less about Fast and the Furious, Need for Speed, I'm not for Lock. May God rest his soul. Not that he's dead or anything, it's an inside joke. But I really hate cars. I hate the whole scene. There's, people out by me that they love cars, they love driving, but they took something, such, an idea as just Japanese street drifting, and turned it into the most epic thing I have ever seen in my life, with the most fantastic Eurobeat soundtrack. And it took no negative enthusiasm that I had for cars and racing and that sort of stuff, and in general, and now I actually have enthusiasm for that sort of stuff. Not so much in the sense that I like cars, but I just like Initial D. And, in the case of Hajime no Ippo, same thing really applies. I'm not a big fan of boxing. When I went into the series, I was expecting, it's going to be kind of ho-hum. Yeah, you'll get hooked. It's not going to be a bad series. I did not expect these fights to be as epic as they were. So, yes, perhaps it might have to do with your expectations for the series and whether it meets them or really exceeds them, which in most cases, a lot of the series I see, I've heard about them, I've heard things about them, but it was never to the point of where, like, I watched, I read a whole entire Wikipedia or anything like that. I like to go into these series with as little pre-existing knowledge as possible. So I think that's why these animes are underrated, and I can keep going on, Berserk, etc., etc., etc. But, it's not always sales either. People need to understand ratings are not equivalent to sales. Just because something sells a lot does not mean it's, a fantastic thing. It happens all the time, especially, I'm not even talking about anime or manga at this point. With movies, there will be a really mediocre movie that comes out and it'll do great at the box office, like Madagascar 3. Let's just pull, something right out of my ass. Madagascar 3, for example. That movie cannot be good. I mean, yeah, it's a kid's movie. I'm not probably picking the best example. Sue me, whatever. But it did relatively well at the box office. I think it beat Spider-Man, or Ice Age beat Spider-Man this past week at the box office. Ratings do not equal sales. So I want you to throw that idea right out the window, because I think a lot of people kind of, Naruto sold 50 million volumes of the manga, so, or, again, pulling numbers out of my ass, I have no idea how they sold 50 million, wouldn't surprise me. Oh, so that means it's a great, great perfectly rated. I think Naruto's vastly overrated, for reasons that I've stated numerous times, and I'm not going to state any longer unless, I absolutely must. But, I think people need to look at it from, like, the kind of perspective that I'm looking at. What do these animes, what do these mangas do so well that, people don't really appreciate? And there are plenty of things if you actually sit down, like I said, Hajime no Ippo, Initial D, I can even say Rurouni Kenshin, stuff like that. Black Line, very underrated in my opinion. I thought that was an excellent, original concept for a movie. Granted, they didn't really get a chance to fully explore that because of budgets and that sort of stuff happens all the time. But people need to look at it from this, like I said, look at it from the perspective of what do these animes bring to the table that you don't really see in other animes, other mangas that you watch? And like I said, it might be a thing of perception. Case in point, people said that Hajime no Ippo is not underrated. I think it is vastly underrated. It's an opinion thing, so you're not always going to agree with people on that, but it's your opinion, so who the hell cares? Alright guys, that is my little sort of discussion video. video responses always, comments. I don't really care about likes. I just want interaction. Give me a little bit of interaction. Give me a little bit of back and forth. I'm always down for that. That's the kind of cool stuff that I like. And I will catch you guys later. Peace.